Alrighty folks, welcome back to another video from Yates Computers Tips and Reviews. I want to start out with mentioning everybody head on over there, hit subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit the bell so you can get all the future updates. The one key part that has kind of come up this year, and I was not really going to do too much of a video on this subject because it's not really up to me to point out a lot of the negatives, but I thought it was kind of an interesting concept once I started thinking about it. And that was one of the big YouTubers and another big YouTuber pointed out a lot of mistakes or errors or other things in their videos. Of course, I'm not to the level of that YouTuber where I can do a lot of benchmarks, give a lot of results, and a lot of other things. So to me, this was kind of a subject that I fell into that I thought would be good for this year as a rabbit hole subject. Because I'm sure a lot of people watch this YouTuber and understand all of his past. He talks about it a lot. And understanding where you started from and where you are now, where your goals are, what all your intentions are, even for like me doing my channel, I can kind of understand and represent and understand, comprehend all of what's taken place. And to me, that reminds me a lot of the computer stuff. And that is kind of why I brought this up, because it's not only due to that. I appreciate and I applaud the YouTuber who brought out all of that information. And of course, I don't want a lot of negativity. I hate all the haters and I hate all the people that were saying a lot of probably inappropriate stuff and commenting on a lot of stuff. Because they are there trying to relay information. Sometimes you can get off track and need to be set back on track, even as businesses, even as an individual person, might need to be set back on track of making sure you are doing the right things. That is kind of why I am doing this channel, to inform everybody of all the information. Knowing 1 stick, 2 sticks, 4 sticks of memory, what the differences are. So this is the rabbit hole kind of a scenario. Knowing, should I go with what kind of video card? How many manufacturers of video cards you have? What options of video cards do you have? What ports? Everything that's available. I have all kinds of information out there. HDMI cable, display cable, what's the difference? How many ports? How many ports do you really need? Monitors, refresh rates. There's a million things that come into a lot of these videos and a lot of things. So, as for the consumer, the business grade, and all of that type of stuff, maybe you only buy a very specific brand of computers at your business. Maybe it's time to review other brands and manufacturers. I brought up memory issues where manufacturers are selling computers with 12 gigs of memory. So there's a lot of things that have come up that I've mentioned in all my videos for the last 3 years now that all relate to this. That sometimes people get off track or get on a track and really stick to that track. I only buy Intel video cards. I only buy Asus video cards. I only buy, people in the old days only bought ATI video cards. Well, yeah, they were very good video cards. But nowadays things have changed. ATI does not exist anymore. It was bought out. It's merged into other companies and it's gone. these are some of these facts that are out there that maybe some people have gotten misled or off in a certain track, that I am trying to shine some light on some of these subjects. So this was kind of a whole rabbit hole within itself, because this is your past, your purchasing habits, what you look at. You know, if you only buy Intel processors, do you only buy AMD processors? You know, there's a lot of variables out there. Of course, I'm not saying if you only buy one processor or another, you should go buy a different one. But you may want to look at some of the variables that are out there, and you may not. It may not matter. And this is important because I have 2 end-of-year videos out there, quiz videos. I know not a lot of people have seen this year's. It is very important because, again, this falls into this category too of being on a certain track and not realizing you need to expand your view to see all the other things you really need. I've talked about a lot of things: firewalls, switches, multiple firewalls, internal security, external security. There's a lot of things there. If you're a small business, home person, even a large business, you might get kind of off track. Now you have all this cloud-based, you have all this other stuff coming in that are really changing a lot of scenarios, that you may need to look at how you function and you operate, and how you look at your tech, and how you look at this year's quiz, your network. Understanding your network layout. Is your network layout proper? Do you have everything you really need? This is really not a quiz in itself. This is more of a check for you. So I have the end of year stuff quiz already. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because next year I'm probably going to touch on security, and I'm going to touch on gaming. And gaming is more than just gaming. It's going to be gaming and high performance, because you may need higher performance systems and higher spec systems to run certain bits of software and certain things, server-wise and other things that a lot of changes have come to. A lot of changes have come to the basic computer. A lot of those basic changes that have come to the computer are needing to be rolled out in the server line. Because, again, you're on that certain track. You buy standard spinning mechanical drives. I mean, these are the old, giant, old drives. This is not standard anymore. This is the one. This isn't even IED. I believe this is SCSI. And the tech isn't there anymore. SCSI is still there, but it is not this interface SCSI. SCSI is something different nowadays than it actually used to be. So it's kind of an interesting concept, and it was an eye-opener to me when all of this came out, that kind of like, you know what? I think this needs to be brought out in a way that is appropriate for all the end users and everybody else out there. Not only streaming media, news, even today, television networks, I find, are doing the same thing as everything else. They're on this track, and they stay on this track when they really need to broaden and looking at what's out there. What kind of shows, movies. How many people go look at what new movies are out, and they're old movies they just remade, or they're sequels to, or they're spin-off of. Where is the new original content? So, wanted to do this video. I know it's kind of a strange video, But to me, this is the rabbit hole subject because you are looking at doing something. You're looking at building a computer. Okay? Well, how many sticks of memory do you need in there? How much memory do you need in there? How much is too much memory? What is the cost of memory? How much is 16 gigs compared to 32 gigs if you buy a pre-built system? Do you need DDR4? Do you need DDR5? There's a whole variable on, do you need DDR4 or do you need DDR5? Other than, I want it because of a speed variable. Technically, due to what CPU you buy nowadays, the manufacturer can kind of force you to make that decision between 4 and 5. There's some manufacturers that actually will allow you to buy a board that supports 4 or 5. So, there are variables out there, and knowing to keep that span or view open might help you and might save you a lot of money. Because knowing that you can go out and get a motherboard and a CPU that's DDR4 that's going to cost you $400, $500 less than buying the same CPU, same motherboard that's DDR5 rated, that maybe the solid state drive that's on there, maybe it's version 4, 5, 6, 8, 12, whatever the version is, when you look at that motherboard, that there might be differences in there, knowing that. But knowing you could save $1,000 on building a computer on a DDR4 spec for a workstation is different than, oh, I have to spend the extra $1,200, $1,300 to build a server-based or a multi-user computer, might be worth the difference. So, this is where I kind of thought it was kind of an interesting rabbit hole subject, because knowing benchmarks, knowing those type of things. The other thing that was brought up was they did not realize there's a difference between every CPU you bring in and you test. Not only is there a difference between every CPU and every motherboard you bring in and every memory you bring in, it kind of is where you see benchmarks from certain manufacturers where the benchmark is really high. And testers and everybody else will tell you, hey, you're not going to truly meet that speed. You're not really going to meet this. Odds are they did actually hit that benchmark. But what they found is, due to the chip lotteries, however the chips are manufactured, whatever speeds they are, however they run, you may end up with a motherboard that runs 5% faster than the other ones in your batch. You might end up with a CPU that runs 5% faster than the other ones in your batch. You might end up with memory that runs faster than the other ones in your batch. Here's kind of the weird rabbit hole subject. You have a CPU that runs 5%, you have a motherboard, you have a memory that all run faster than specs that run faster than all the rest you have. You put all those faster parts in together on a board that's faster, the CPU, the memory. It might perform the same as the other system. It might actually perform a lot faster because you have the higher performance stuff. So benchmarks are kind of a weird variable, because you might have 2 or 3 great parts and you have one that's standard. So you're going to get different results from benchmarks. That's why it's kind of like the Olympics grading. You throw out the highest, you throw out the lowest, you do an average, and that's kind of where your benchmark is. network speed testing. You do a network speed test, odds are you're going to have different variables in it. And what your average is, that's kind of a good average. You know what your average speed is. So, understanding all of this information, being aware of it, because, again, this goes back to my quiz from 2 years ago. My end of year big thing that I'm still finding on a lot of systems that I know a lot of people haven't seen. I believe that was the 21 quiz or 22 quiz that really has a CPU issue on motherboards. And that can be some of this CPU lottery factor. And it might not be the CPU factory lottery. It could actually be another part on the board. I'm leaning towards more of power settings in BIOS might be causing that issue. I'm not 100% sure, but if you watch that video, I gave you the remedy on how to fix that. So this is the weird rabbit hole for this year. I know this is kind of a weird video, but this is kind of a thing I wanted to bring out to let everybody know to be aware of. I have case videos. There's differences between cases. There's difference between power supplies. There's differences between a lot of things. And I don't hear a lot of people letting people really know to, hey, be aware of this. Because just because you go in and see 3 1200 watt power supplies, there are different forms, there are different wire formats, there's different pin structures, there's a lot of things that come involved in that. Knowing the length of the cables. There are some that are fixed cables, there are a lot of them nowadays that are the modulars where you plug in the cables. Knowing the length of those cables is another factor. Because you can't just usually go out and grab another one because of the wiring schematics and how things are wired. So I know I've thrown a bunch of weird stuff into this video, but because of the rabbit hole year, understanding all of this, I'm trying to bring a lot of this stuff into view because I don't think a lot of people are actually watching all these videos. I can see there's some that have no play at all. There's some that I have 80 or 90 views and then I have 1. These are very relevant, important subjects that I think everybody needs to know. And I know the new generation out there has grown up with computers. They know the basics on computers, how to hook a computer up. I mean, it's pretty simple. There's not too many connectors that are the same look, same style, same size. In the old days, there were. Your PS2 for your keyboard and mouse were the same connectors, but they were different. If you plugged them in wrong, they didn't work. There was a lot of different connectors and a lot of different things on computers, and multiple of them. Parallel ports, serial ports, game ports. You could have 5 game ports on there. And you can't just plug into game port 1 and program your game to work for 3 and have it work. You had to program it to the right port. You had to know how to do all of this stuff. Nowadays, all of it's plug and play USB. So, wanted to go through and do a video on trying to let people know some of this information that's not really told. Again, this is why I'm doing the whole channel. And to bring out next year, it'll be a different subject. It might be changing before the end of the year. Getting down to pretty much the content that I wanted to cover for the rabbit hole. So people are aware that it's not just as simple as taking a single video cable, an HDMI cable, plugging it in, and you're good. Well, it is, but it isn't. Yeah, you'll get video signal. Yeah, you'll get other things. I just bought some HDMI cables that state only support 30 frames per second. Most of this stuff is 60 frames per second. I would have to test it and figure it out, but that's what it says on there. I didn't pay much for them. Got them at a discount store. Bought them. Check them out. If they're any good, I can use them. If not, donate them. I'll do whatever I need to. But they're HDMI cables. What the actual spec are? HDMI 1, 2, 3, I don't know. I'm imagining it's the older ones because of the limitation on them. Knowing these things, bringing these things out, and making sure people are aware is why I'm, again, doing this channel. Want everybody to head over and subscribe so that I can see that you guys are paying attention to these videos. Because you're hearing me ask you to go on over and subscribe. So it's very important to know these facts. Because these facts aren't really going to go away. Odds are people are going to talk less and less about them because they're going to talk about the current tech. And the current tech really is not something I want to stay on top of because it's not current tech. It's really present tech that's going to be past tech by the time you actually get the information out. What I'm trying to do is get you to do your own research, do your own homework, and be aware of what you need and what you don't need. These are the major factors. To be aware of what other things are out there. LED lighting, LEDs in the case, LED fans, LED controllers, all these things that people don't really comprehend and understand nowadays. Well, I'm using it at my workstation at work. Do you need LED everything? Do you need LED fans? Do you need clear glass panels on it? Do you need to see in there to see what's in there? These are all choices you make when you buy a case. Once you buy the case, then you have to figure out what you're going to put in the case due to what you bought. So, let me wrap this one up. Thank everybody for watching. I know it's kind of a strange one because a lot of variables are coming in. You got Windows 11 that's out. You got Windows 12 right around the corner, supposedly next year, that's coming out with VM software and all, and virtual reality and everything else, all these bells and whistles that are supposedly going to be in there, but we'll find out when they officially release it what is actually in there. So it's kind of an interesting subject, and it's going to be a whole nother broadening your view of, do you stay Windows 11? Do you stay 12? What are you going to do? It's the whole dilemma again when there's a new Windows version. So, wanted to just go through, and because this is going to probably be one of the end of year wrap-up videos. The stuff I mentioned at the beginning of the video is pretty much old news. Everybody's probably heard about it by now. If you hadn't, well, now you kind of have. You can go research it. You can do your studies on it. But what was interesting is it was something that I thought of that any business or any IT person or anybody in an industry might want to evaluate, because you might be doing the same things. You might be enforcing a lot of standards and a lot of things that you want to do, that you think need to be done, that you want to do in a certain fashion, and you might want to review some of that and rethink some of it. Figure out, do we actually still need to do these processes? Do we still need to do this? Your backup policies, all of these type of things, because now a lot of this stuff goes out to the cloud and gets backed up. Physical drives, fire safes, multiple locations for you to store these items. A lot of these things are changing. Knowing this, being aware of it, and broadening the horizon on it is what I'm mentioning now. Because, again, I've seen a lot of these changes. I've seen a lot of changes. And knowing some of this stuff and seeing it and trying to make sure that other people are aware of it is kind of hard. So, again, let me wrap this one up. Thank everybody for watching.